The first time I saw the pictures, I thought it was a mistake. My phone lit up with a Facebook notification. And there it was, my son, standing in a crisp black tuxedo, his arm around a young woman in a white lace gown. His smile was wide, his eyes sparkling. My heart should have burst with pride, but it didn't, because in bold letters above the photo, the caption read, "Everyone's here." I froze. My thumb trembled as I scrolled. Rows of happy faces filled the screen. Family, friends, people I hadn't seen in years. His father was there, grinning like he owned the moment. Even distant cousins I barely remembered made the cut. But not me, not a single glimpse. I pressed the phone closer, almost to my face, desperate to find myself in the crowd, maybe in the background, a blurred outline. But no, my son had gotten married, and I hadn't even known. The room spun around me. I could hear the neighbor's lawnmower outside, the steady roar cutting through my silence. My hands went cold. My chest felt heavy, like someone had set a brick on it. I whispered into the emptiness, "Why didn't you tell me, Jason?" Tears stung my eyes, but anger burned hotter. Not just because I wasn't invited, but because he let the world know. He let strangers know, before his own mother. And the words kept echoing, louder and louder in my head. Everyone's here. Everyone but me. I barely slept that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw his smile in those pictures. The kind of smile that used to be just for me, when he was little and I cheered at his soccer games, or when I taped his drawings to the fridge like they were masterpieces. Now that same smile was shining at a woman I didn't even know, in a ceremony I wasn't allowed to see. By morning, my pillow was damp, and my throat felt raw from holding back sobs. I made coffee, but it tasted bitter, no matter how much cream I poured in. My hands shook as I picked up my phone again, scrolling through the comments under the photos. Beautiful wedding. So glad we could be there. Perfect day with everyone you love. Each word was a blade. I saw pictures of him with his groomsmen, laughing so hard his shoulders shook. Pictures of his new wife twirling on the dance floor, her dress sparkling under fairy lights. Then there was a photo that stopped me cold. Jason standing with his father, their arms wrapped tight around each other. The caption said, "Couldn't have done this without you, Dad." My stomach turned. His father, my ex-husband, had been there. He got the toast, the dance, the pictures. I got silence. I gripped the phone so tightly my knuckles went white. "He erased me," I whispered. My voice cracked. The sound of the refrigerator humming filled the kitchen. I stared at the wedding cake in the photos, a perfect 3-tier tower covered in flowers, and all I could taste was bitterness in my mouth. The thought crept in, unwelcome but impossible to ignore. Maybe I was never meant to be part of his big days anymore. But then anger flared again. No, I raised him. I loved him. I gave up everything for him. And now he pretended I didn't exist? Something inside me hardened. If Jason thought he could erase me, he was wrong. This wasn't the end of the story. I sat in my car outside the grocery store, gripping the steering wheel like it was the only thing keeping me from falling apart. I hadn't planned on coming here, but the walls of my house felt like they were closing in, suffocating me with silence. I thought maybe being around people, even strangers, would remind me I was still alive, still visible. But all I could see in my mind were those photos, the lights, the music, the people cheering, my son walking down an aisle without me. I slammed my palm against the steering wheel. The sharp sound startled me, and for a moment I just stared at my reflection in the rearview mirror. My eyes were red, swollen, my face pale. I looked like a ghost. I whispered, "No, you don't get to disappear like this." Before I could talk myself out of it, I pulled out my phone and dialed his number. My hands were slick with sweat, the screen slippery. It rang once, twice. By the third ring, my heart was pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. Then, voicemail. His voice filled the car, cheerful, like nothing was wrong. "Hey, it's Jason, leave a message." My mouth went dry. For a second, I couldn't breathe. Then I hit the end call button so fast it nearly slipped from my grip. I couldn't leave a message. Not like this. Not sounding broken. I needed answers, but I wasn't going to beg for them. So I drove. Past the grocery store. Past the little park where I used to take him to play when he was 5. The swing set was still there. Rusted now, squeaking in the wind. My chest tightened. By the time I pulled into my driveway, I had made up my mind. If Jason wouldn't come to me, I'd go to him. I didn't care if it meant showing up uninvited at his doorstep. I deserved to know why my own son thought the world deserved his wedding, but not his mother. 2 days later, I stood on the porch of Jason's house, my fists clenched at my sides. The late afternoon sun beat down on me, and sweat slid down my back. But it wasn't the heat that made me tremble. It was the silence inside that house. I rang the doorbell once. My heart raced. I could hear muffled footsteps, then nothing. I rang again. Finally, the door opened. Jason stood there, my son, taller than I remembered, his jaw sharper, his eyes tired but alert. For a moment, he just stared at me like I was a stranger who'd wandered to the wrong address. "Mom," he said, his voice low, almost wary. I swallowed hard. His face, so familiar and yet so distant, knocked the air from my chest. "You got married," I said, the words scraping out of me. His shoulders tensed. He glanced behind him, then stepped halfway onto the porch, pulling the door closer to his side. Yeah, I did. I searched his eyes, desperate to find some crack, some softness. "And you didn't think I deserved to know?" He ran a hand through his hair, sighing. "It wasn't like that." "Then what was it like?" My voice shook, but I refused to back down. "Because I saw the photos, Jason. I saw everyone but me." He flinched, his jaw tightening. For a moment he didn't speak. Then quietly he said, "It was complicated." I felt my nails dig into my palms. Complicated is forgetting an invitation. Complicated is a mix-up with the date. Erasing your mother, that's not complicated. That's deliberate. His eyes flickered and I saw it. The guilt, the shadow of it across his face. But he didn't answer. He just stood there, silent, the weight of years and choices pressing between us. And in that silence, I realized something. Whatever this was, whatever reason he thought he had, it wasn't just about the wedding. It went deeper, much deeper. I felt the heat rising in my chest, but I forced my voice low, steady. "Tell me the truth, Jason. Why wasn't I there?" He shifted his weight, glanced back into the house again and lowered his tone. It was Sarah's idea, his wife, the stranger in white lace, who now carried his name. I blinked. "She didn't want me there?" His jaw clenched. "She thought it would stir things up, with Dad, with everything that happened." For a second the world tilted. I gripped the railing of the porch just to stay upright. "Stir things up? Jason, I'm your mother. I carried you, raised you, fought for you when your father walked out on us. And you agreed to that? To cutting me out of the biggest day of your life?" He exhaled sharply, running both hands over his face. "Mom, it wasn't about cutting you out. I didn't want drama. Sarah wanted a smooth day. And Dad, don't you dare say Dad deserved to be there more than me." I snapped, my voice breaking. Jason's eyes flickered, something like shame crossing his face. But then he stiffened. I didn't say that. The cicadas buzzed in the trees behind me, the air thick with late summer heat. I could taste the bitterness on my tongue, metallic, sharp. I whispered, "Do you even understand what this feels like? To see your only child's wedding through strangers' posts online. To read everyone's here and know it was a lie." Jason looked down, his lips pressed tight. "I'm sorry," he murmured, but it was soft, almost like he wanted the wind to swallow it before it reached me. And for the first time, standing there on his porch, I realized he wasn't just protecting Sarah. He was protecting himself. From me, that cut deeper than the wedding ever could. I stared at him, the boy I once held against my chest when storms scared him, the boy whose scraped knees I kissed better. Now he stood in front of me like a man I barely knew, giving me apologies that tasted like dust. "Sorry isn't enough," I said quietly. His shoulders slumped. "I know." The door creaked behind him, and a woman's voice called out, light and curious. "Jason? Who is it?" Then she appeared. Sarah, the bride from the photos. Her blonde hair was pulled back, her face fresh, glowing. She wore no makeup but looked like she didn't need it. Her eyes landed on me and I saw it instantly. The recognition. She knew who I was. "Hi," she said carefully, her hand curling against the doorframe. "You must be his mother," I cut in. My voice was sharper than I meant it to be, but my throat burned. Jason shifted uncomfortably. "Sarah, this is my mom." Her lips pressed into a thin smile. "It's nice to finally meet you." Finally. The word twisted like a knife. I stepped forward, the porch wood groaning under my weight. "Why didn't you want me at your wedding?" Jason muttered. "Mom." But I didn't look at him. My eyes locked on hers. Sarah straightened, her tone calm but firm. "It wasn't personal. We just thought, with history, with tensions, it was better to keep things simple." Simple. That word made my blood boil. "You call erasing a mother from her son's wedding simple?" Her face didn't flinch, but her eyes flickered. She knew. She knew exactly what she had done. Jason reached for her hand, like he needed her to steady him. And the sight of it, the two of them standing together united, made my chest ache. I whispered, almost to myself, "You've already chosen your family, haven't you?" Neither of them answered. And in their silence, I felt the finality of it. But I also felt something else spark inside me. Fury. Not wild, not loud. Cold. Focused. If they thought they could erase me quietly, they had no idea who they were dealing with. I drove home in a daze, the road blurring past me. My hands were tight on the wheel, my knuckles pale, but my mind was sharper than it had been in days. They wanted silence. They wanted me tucked away, forgotten, while they painted a picture-perfect life for the world to see. I wouldn't give them that. As soon as I walked through my front door, I pulled out the box I hadn't opened in years. It was shoved deep in the closet, under old blankets and winter coats. Inside were photos, Jason's first birthday, his graduation, the road trip we took across the country in my beat-up minivan. Every milestone I stood beside him for, every sacrifice I made to give him a life worth celebrating. I spread them across the table, my living room filling with pieces of proof that I was there, that I mattered. I picked up the photo of Jason at 12, his hair messy, his grin wide, holding a baseball trophy half his size. I remembered the game like it was yesterday, the heat, the dust, my voice hoarse from screaming his name. His dad hadn't shown up. I had. Tears welled in my eyes, but I didn't let them fall. Not this time. I pulled out my phone and opened Facebook. My fingers hovered over the screen, trembling, but then steadied. I began uploading the photos, one after another, with captions that cut straight through the silence Jason had built around me. The moments that made him who he is. The ones I'll never forget. From scraped knees to graduations, I was always there. Funny how some people forget where they came from. I hit post. My heart thundered in my chest. Within minutes, the notifications started. Likes, comments, shares, friends, old neighbors, even some of Jason's cousins, all chiming in with memories, with praise, with questions. The truth was out there now, undeniable. Jason wanted me invisible, but I had just reminded the world who I was. And for the first time since I saw those wedding photos, I felt like I could breathe. By morning, my phone was buzzing nonstop. Dozens of notifications lit up the screen, comments pouring in from people I hadn't spoken to in years. "I remember that game. You were the loudest cheerleader out there. You raised a good man. Don't let anyone tell you different." Wait, why wasn't she at the wedding? The questions spread fast, the way fire catches on dry grass. I hadn't expected it to go viral, but it was clear my story struck a nerve. Then came the message. From Jason. It popped up in my inbox mid-morning. "Mom, take those posts down, please. You're making this worse." I stared at the screen, my coffee going cold in my hand. My fingers hovered, but instead of replying, I clicked into the message thread and typed, "Worse for who? You or me?" 3 dots appeared, then vanished. appeared again, vanished. He didn't answer. The silence told me everything. Later that afternoon, another message came, but this time from Sarah. Longer, carefully worded. I understand you're hurt, but this isn't the way. Jason loves you, but you're putting him in an impossible position. If you want a relationship with us, this isn't how to start. I almost laughed. Relationship? After she erased me from the most important day of my son's life, my fingers shook as I typed back. If you wanted a relationship, you would have started by giving me a seat at his wedding. I hit send before I could soften it. For the rest of the day, I watched the tide shift. Friends tagged Jason in my post, asking why I wasn't there. Extended family started leaving comments, some subtle, some not. A cousin wrote, "A mother deserves better than this." By evening, I could almost feel Jason's anger humming through the phone. But beneath it, I knew there had to be shame too. He thought he could rewrite his story without me. But now the world was watching, and the story wasn't his alone anymore. That night my phone rang. Jason's name lit up the screen. I froze, staring at it until the call went to voicemail. A second later, a text came through. "We need to talk, face to face." My heart pounded. Part of me wanted to ignore him, let him sit with the weight of what he'd done. But another part, the mother part, ached to hear his voice, to look him in the eye without the world watching. I typed back one word. "When?" The reply came instantly. "Tomorrow, come alone." I met him at the park where he used to play as a boy. The swings creaked in the wind, the same sound that once made him giggle. Jason was already there, pacing. When he saw me, he shoved his hands in his pockets. "Mom, why'd you do it?" I held his gaze. "Because you erased me. I won't apologize for reminding you I exist." His jaw tightened. For a long moment he said nothing. Then his voice cracked. "I thought it would be easier. I didn't want the past to ruin the day." Tears blurred my eyes. "Jason, I am your past, and I was your present every single day when no one else showed up." He looked away, wiping his face quickly like he didn't want me to notice. Finally he whispered, "I was wrong." The words were soft, but they hit me harder than any silence ever could. I stepped closer, resting my hand on his arm. "You don't get to erase me, Jason. Not then, not now, not ever." He nodded, his shoulders sagging. "I want to fix this." For the first time since seeing those wedding photos, my chest loosened. I breathed again, because maybe, just maybe, this wasn't the end of us. It was the start of something new,